Season 5 launches us into an entirely new sphere, and we're setting the tone with a powerhouse conversation. Reed Joyner of Google joins us to unpack the secrets behind career longevity, mastering the art of networking in volatile environments, and learning how to not just survive change, but leverage it for growth.
Welcome to the Omega Podcast with Reed Joyner, who is a New York-based account management leader with over 6 years of experience working across some of the biggest names in tech, including Google, LinkedIn, G2, and Salesforce. He spent his career owning customer relationships end-to-end, helping clients grow, renew, and actually see value from the products they invest in. Originally trained as a mechanical engineer at the University of Maryland, Reed made an early pivot in tech sales and quickly found his lane in account management, where strategy, communication, and trust all intersect. These days, he's especially interested in what separates average account managers from great ones, how to build long-term careers in tech, and how to do meaningful work without burning out or chasing titles just for the sake of it. Reed, it is such a pleasure to have you on the Omega Podcast.
Thank you for having me on. It's a heck of an intro.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you have such an incredible journey, and I know our listeners are super excited to dive deep to learn more about your career trajectory, but also to hear more about what inspired you to pursue a career in technology, especially when it comes to strategic account management.
Yeah, no, I can give you kind of my background and how I ended up in this role. So yeah, I'm Reed from Maryland, Rockville, Maryland. Grew up in that area, went to the University of Maryland College Park. I ended up studying engineering, realized that wasn't really going to be my path. I did a couple of like professional development curriculums or programs coming out of college. Basically, after working as an internship as a mechanical engineer, I was like, this isn't it. Did this professional development program. They introduced me to sales. I met this one guy at Intuit who, kind of gave me a chance to take my first sales gig out in Tucson, Arizona. Figured out I could make money talking to people. Ended up having a really good skill set for it. So did that for a summer, came back, graduated, ended up after graduating, moved to Chicago, worked at Salesforce for a short stint, went to G2, was doing a lot of outbound prospecting. After G2, I ended up at LinkedIn, moving to New York post-COVID, and then was there for 4 years, and now I'm at Google. It's been a heck of a journey. I've been very fortunate for the situation that I've been in, and I'm still happy to keep going. It's an enjoyable career.
Yeah, it definitely sounds as though that your career has been very turbulent. As you mentioned, you had some opportunities that you leveraged via networking, meeting new people. You mentioned a representative from Intuit that provided an opportunity for you in Tucson, Arizona. But one thing that stood out was that you shared that there was something that wasn't for you. Can you walk us through your career path from your early roles to becoming an account strategist at Google? I think you mentioned something that a lot of people resonate with is doing a role that doesn't fit you and acknowledging that and then pivoting and going in a different direction.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, so I was working as a contractor for the Navy in the DC area. It's not uncommon because the DC area its economy and job force is very government heavy. I was able to get an internship at a company where I was doing mechanical engineering, where I was basically installing radar systems on roofs. It sounded cool on paper, but majority of the day you'd just be downstairs in a room kind of twiddling your thumbs until there was something popped up. I also felt like some of the education that I did at school wasn't really aligning with like some of the actual real world applications. So when I went back to school, I was just sitting there. I was like, there's no way this is going to be my career. Like, let me go taste something else. I actually tried to break into consulting and finance, which is kind of what everyone tries to do coming out of college, and never had the background for it. I met a guy into it who was really kind of that driving force, who was like, I think you can be really good at sales. He also looked fly. So I was like, what do you wear? Like, what do you do? Like, you didn't seem like, it didn't seem like your typical professional. Like, you seemed like you enjoyed life. So I was like, whatever you do, I want to do it. And then, went to Tucson, Arizona. Like I said, I could figure out the skill sets that I had could make me money, which was obviously like communication, being very personal with people, and just, influencing a room, which is something that I've always tried to do or just had a natural talent for. And it just made sense. And like I said, I figured I could make money doing it. So I was like, let's keep going.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people are motivated by the price tag, but I think it's also important that you acknowledge that there was mentors and people along the journey that helped you get to where you currently are at Google. I mean, who have been your biggest mentors or influencers along the way to help you propel to such an incredible career?
Oh man, I have so many names. The first guy that actually helped me out was an individual by the name of Damian Wright. He was one of the sales leaders at Intuit who was working on the internship program. Then after that, I ended up going to Salesforce. The people that I was working with were in roles above me. So like my buddy Jadon, I had this one guy named Steven who was just an individual that he grew his career fairly quickly in the sales org at Salesforce. And he was just someone who just shot it to me straight. It was like, this is what it takes to be a true professional, and how you carry yourself and, what you need to do to ascend. So I would just say all the people that have been in roles that, saw something in me, maybe when I didn't see something in myself, were people that just kept propelling me forward. And then even at LinkedIn, I met some great mentors such as Moose, Larry, just so many people that I could name, but they all took an interest in me and were just, helping push me along a path of, hey, you can be good at this. Like, let's take this seriously. And that's not to say like you're not going to have, faults or, obstacles or, you're going to trip up on yourself when you're early. But I think just having that community of people that were, taking a liking to you and saw something in you can make a big difference. So,
no, for sure. I think that's important that you had advocates along the way, people that were encouraging you to share, hey, you can get to that next stage in your career trajectory if you desire to do so. And I think that's important to have that community of support in order for you to elevate, especially in the professional field that you are in. But for many, they find that it's difficult, having conversations with people, putting yourself out there, and a very difficult time with people fitting for jobs against artificial intelligence. I mean, how would you define the role of an account strategist in mid-market segments at Google? I mean, this is something that is obviously sales heavy, right? There's relationships that are necessary, but how would you define that role?
So I'll take a step back. So every role that I've had, so account strategist, account manager, all those roles are interchangeable. It just depends like what the company decides to choose as a title for that role. So like at LinkedIn, I was an account director. At Google, I was an account strategist, which pretty much have very similar skill sets, to be quite frank. Specifically at Google, you're essentially helping people run their ads better and take advantage of different Google products, whether that's like YouTube, search, demand gen, could go the whole 9 yards. And then at LinkedIn, it was really dealing with renewals. It was software sales. So it was more dealing with like contract renewals, upsells, cross sells, multi-threading into different teams and, adoption and implementation. So a lot of the skill sets that I had in those roles, I think are interchangeable, where it's like, got to be a good listener, have to really understand like what problem they're trying to solve and what they're looking to accomplish, and making sure that you're aligning the metrics that they care about to the solutions that you can provide. So I think genuinely, if you're a good listener and you're willing to help or serve the customers that you work with, anyone can be, really good in those roles, to be quite frank.
Yeah, I think definitely adopting the metrics of your clients is very important, because I think every company has their own margins or their way of benchmarking success, but being able to adopt and to be able to maneuver how other companies do it is so critical, because you kind of have to be a bit of a chameleon. You have to adopt their practices in order to ensure that they're getting the results that they desire. But the essence of relationships, whether it's account management, account strategist, is trust. How do you approach approach building trust with clients in competitive and fast-moving tech environments when they're probably shelling out $5 million, $10 million for different projects? And you have to be able to provide that trust or transparency in real time, whether it's at conferences, whether it's during demos. I mean, what has been sort of your approach to developing that probably quicker?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think building trust is how you show up to conversations and, what are you bringing to the table to help them, right? So for example, like a lot of customers that we work with on the account management side, a lot of them have maybe been customers with, XYZ company for many years. They've probably seen a lot of different reps. They have probably bought softwares from different companies. And everyone at the end of the day is, everyone's trying to get a sale. Everybody wants to make more money out of you, right? So the biggest thing for me for building trust is like coming in and making sure that, hey, number one, I've done my research on the company, whether that is, looking at company websites, if they have 10Ks or any type of public facing information that says, hey, these are the focuses of our company. Two, I would say any type of information that I can get from internal sources, like what did the previous rep talk about? Were there any issues that were not addressed with their previous rep? How can we make sure that this relationship is better than it previously once was? And then three, I would say, is just making sure you showcase like, hey, I'm here to work for you. I'm here to help you in, you're engaging with me for a reason. Like, let me understand that reason. Let me understand why you're taking this call. What would a successful partnership look like? And once you are able to document that in whether that's like a upfront contract or, just gentleman's handshake in a sense, I think those things have enabled me to build really good relationships with clients, and they've also helped me contribute to my success at different companies I've been at.
Yeah, for sure. Engaging, being able to develop that customer profile. I used to call it like the customer diagnostic, strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, but then also understanding what are their particular goals and visions and aspirations, because there's a particular reason why they're engaging with you, whether it's, as you mentioned, to make more money, to increase their revenue streams, increase their sales pipelines, improve existing products that they're looking to deploy out to their existing workforce or to their customers. But it's also important to acknowledge, you're fostering a lot of different ways to collaborate with these clients, right? Because now you're an extension of their team, right? You're aligning between the sales process with the product teams and then the different marketing teams, not only within their team or their organization, but also within Google. How do you foster those types of collaborative and alignments between those different departments? Yeah,
I think understanding what each department cares about and then also aligning that to like the bigger vision of the organization or the company, right? So understanding, what metrics do they care about? How does, let's say you're working with product or you're working with insights, right? Like they probably have things that they care about to not only like look good in their org, but obviously to showcase like, hey, this is the value that our organization brings. There's obviously things that the sales org cares about, which at the end of the day, it's typically revenue. And it's like, how can we drive more revenue and, make our customers happier so that they keep spending money with us and don't leave to competitors and things of that nature. And then there's things at the top line of the company that is like, hey, this is where we're going with our organization, right? This is our mission of the company. So I think genuinely, if you're able to find the common threads, number one, to kind of showcase like why certain things matter from products, insights, or even like sales and align those threads across the org, you can get some good buy-in between teams. The second thing I would say is we're all people, like we're all human. Like if you're able to, get in the office, meet these people, just kind of have lunch and like, can someone do yourself a solid? Just having those good fundamental baseline relationships outside of like a corporate setting can also help. Cause then those people are like, hey, like Reed's actually a good dude. He's done a solid for me, whether that's in work or outside of work. I can help him out, or if I can't help him, I can get him to the right team.
For sure. And I like how you mentioned, again, putting yourself out there, being able to have those conversations, finding those common threads. This overarching question is just literally blaring is, what do you do? Right? within an organization, outside, in each department, asking that critical question will definitely help connect the dots when you're in a particular situation where you might need someone that has those particular expertise or may know someone in X department or outside of the organization that does different specialties. I mean, what's your philosophy on leadership, especially when guiding cross-functional teams? Because you are an account manager, you work with different people, of course, but, within your own leadership approaches, how do you kind of guide those different team members to be able to align to that mission or vision that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'm still trying to figure out my leadership style or, my approach to leadership, but I think it's really important to go back to the definition of leadership, which is, motivating people towards a common goal. Right. And then there's different types of leaders that are like business leaders, servant leaders, things of that nature. I think genuinely, if you're able to find things that what people care about and why they care about it, like, for example, like a certain product launch, right? Like a person may not actually really care about the product launch, but they know like this could be good for their career. This could be good for, potential recognition, whether that they want to go down the line and, be a leader within the company. They want to go up for promotion, whatever the case may be. I think if you're able to understand where people are coming from and, what they care most about, and somehow align that to the common goal of the company or your team, you can get good things out of people. And then I would also say is make sure that like you really care about the people as well. Don't come across as a way of, hey, I'm leading you guys, or I have this title. So, you guys have to do what I say. It's no, hey, like I'm a leader. I'm here to serve you guys and help you guys get to where you want to be. But I do realize that there are certain things as a leader I have responsibilities for. So I think if you can find like the common threads again, motivate people towards that common goal. That's how I think about leadership in, these business settings.
Enjoying this episode of the Omega Podcast? We'd love to hear from you. Please share your thoughts or feedback in the comments. You can also check out omegaconsulting.online for more resources, insights, and industry updates. Now, let's get back to the exciting conversation.
Yeah, finding that fine line where you're able to have that emotional intelligence, but able to navigate those relationship dynamics. You might be a director and you're having conversations with the associates, but how do you delegate, but also come across as you're on the same team, right? Versus It's you against me, or I'm leveraging you to get to my particular career aspirations. And, every single corporate environment is different. There are some that are more, I would use the term dictator-esque, because sometimes it's just like, it is what it is. That's your director or that's your leader, and you just got to do what they say. But then there also are instances where there's more collaboration, there's more drawback when it comes to those deeper conversations, being able to have those deeper dialogues, and I really think you mentioned something that's really important. Again, another question is, do you care? Right? Do you care about the people that you work with? Do you care about the mission of the business? And do you care about utilizing everyone a part of your team to reach that greater mission or goal? I mean, you're a leader, of course, and I know there's younger professionals that may be listening to our conversation. If someone's at Google, or let's say any particular company in this instance, that they're in your particular profession and they're looking to improve. I mean, what type of advice would you give a younger professional on how they can grow their team as well as their career in this kind of volatile environment?
Yeah, I'll answer what can people do early on in their career, because I think that's more relevant to what I've done and focused on. I would say number one, like be patient, right? Like I know everyone's in a rush to get to XYZ spot within your organization, whether that's for the fame, the glory, ego, whatever the case may be, but be patient in the role that you're in, right? Like learn how to get stuff done there, and then learn how to just, make really solid relationships with people in different spaces, right? Because you never know what that person might be down the line, right? They may be a leader where they are a hiring manager, and because you had a conversation that they have certain interests, and they may call you up where they say, hey, Reed or Keenan, like I have an opportunity for you, like would love for you to come interview or be a part of the process, right? Being patient, I think, is really important, because like, again, you're not going to figure it all out within a year. If you do, kudos to you. Like it took me a while to kind of get my career going. And like I said, just being like learning how to get stuff done is the most important, because that's what people want, right? I know there's a whole lot of corporate bureaucratic stuff where you're saying like, oh, I did XYZ to, better an organization or whatever the case may be, but it may not actually matter to the business outcomes. I would say like getting stuff done gives you a little bit of free reign at the organizations that I've been with, because as long as you hit your numbers or you hit the targets that you were hired to do, you're going to keep progressing. You're going to be able to keep making more money. And then when it comes to like having to move up and, kind of play the corporate politics, that's a different conversation for a different day. But I would say like early on, be patient, learn how to get stuff done, and just make really good relationships with people. Just be like authentically curious, wanting to learn, and just like get the little things right. Like, showing up on time, grabbing coffee chats, just making sure you're in good spaces where like people are moving forward is probably my best advice.
Perfect. Being patient and enjoying the process, right? The best advice, I think you had mentioned it, is being patient and enjoying the journey. Wherever you desire to be in life, if as long as you're doing the necessary disciplines and you're working hard, you will get there, right? I think it's kind of like a universal truth is kind of how I put it. But, to switch gears a little bit in our conversation, there's a lot going on, especially in the AI era, with people having some misconceptions about tech companies, tech sales specifically, and account strategy. What's one misconception people have about working in tech sales or account strategy from your perspective?
Yeah, I think misconception wise, I don't think people know enough about the career, to be quite frank, and like how it can be really life-changing for people, to be fair. Like, tech sales and account management, they have been really good to me. I've been able to afford to live in New York, pay off debts, and just create a really good community of people and like really good friends through this career. I think when people get started, like people just don't know enough, right? Like, am I just going to be a call monkey? Am I just going to be like, are people actually going to want to talk to me? And some organizations, that's true, right? Like there are definitely call houses or smile and dial organizations where, you got to put up your numbers, 60 to $100 a day. I think like probably when I was starting out, I was making maybe like 50 to like 70 early in my career. But people would talk to me because I was working at like reputable brands. Like people knew who Salesforce was, people knew who G2 was. And again, people knew who LinkedIn was, right? So getting into those spaces where there was like good structure was really good for me. And again, it helped me create like customer stories and, just stories that I've been able to, communicate with other hiring managers or, different opportunities where they say, hey, he's done this. I think he would be a good fit for this new opportunity or whatever the case may be.
Interesting. Yeah. One thing that stood out was like working with reputable brands. I mean, do you feel as though that assisted in the success of your career, just working at, larger companies? Does that matter? Is it relevant today?
1,000%. I think working, if you're early, there's multiple ways to skin a cat. If you go and you work, like if someone worked for NVIDIA, like no one knew who NVIDIA was like 5 years ago. But like if you worked for it and now where it is today, people are like, oh, you worked at NVIDIA. And they would take that as a strong indicator of like, hey, you know how to work hard. I think you'd be a good fit for XYZ opportunity, right? I think for me, and again, I started back in like 2017, 2018. So the tech marketplace was a little bit different. I don't know if there was as many, we're just hearing a lot more like AI hype and a lot more new companies that are popping up. But I think generally you want to find companies that have good people and have like a structure where you can like learn tangible skill sets that you can move forward, right? Being at Salesforce, being at G2, being at LinkedIn, all of those had like structured game plans. And they had good people and they had people that left to different companies and it was just, and they had like solid revenue and ARR and all these things, right? So I think it is important starting out to be in a reputable company just to learn. Now, granted, like you don't have to work at Google or Microsoft, like those are very competitive jobs to get in. But I think if you find companies where there's good leadership, they've proven themselves, maybe they've been in the business for a decade, those are probably good places to be.
Well, I appreciate that response because I think some people would say, yes, definitely working at larger companies is the go-to when it comes to opportunities, landing leadership roles, being able to have a larger exposure. But I've also have worked with individuals that have worked at small startup companies that have gained real hands-on experience of being able to work on the product and really making it very niche and working with the customers and really understanding the customer needs. So I do see it from both angles, and I definitely agree with you that depending on how you leverage those opportunities, help and assist individuals' personal growth. But how should companies rethink their approach to customer success in today's climate? Because you have AI leveraging different customer bases, you have people utilizing bots and using non-humans for different resolutions to their company problems. I mean, how would you sort of define what customer success looks like in this day and age?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think we're so early in AI still. Like, I mean, ChatGPT, I just started using last year, right? I think what happens though over time is we need to look at the metrics that are being measured across different roles and how they contribute to business outcomes, right? So for example, there was a time where if you weren't on the phone, you weren't working, and if you weren't meeting with customers, you weren't working, and it was a bad look, right? Now, with the help of AI, and again, as a sales rep, I'm really using it to just identify business trends, summaries, pull account notes and things, and then kind of making my workflow a lot quicker. Because at the end of the day, people are still just buying software. People are either buying software or they're spending, right? So I think what matters though is looking into how the KPIs of customer success, how is that maybe changing with AI? I'll give you a perfect example, right? Ideally you want to have as many calls with clients as possible, right? You used to be on the phone, you wanted to have as many meetings as possible. You wanted to make sure that customers were using the product X, Y, Z. But now with AI, there's a lot of conversations that I just feel can be sent via email, or, we don't have to spend as much time on the phone together. Obviously, if there's problems that they're having and you want to address those, but I just generally think we need to look at how is our touch points, whether that's customer success, account management, how is that contributing to revenue? And is there a diminishing return, right? If we do 5 to 10 more calls with this one client, we've talked to them multiple times and, we provide them with all the information. Is that still a tangible metric that we need to be looking at, right? There's people who are down the line that do more of that type of analysis than me. So, I'm not going to sit here and tell you what the right answer is, but I think we need to kind of figure out, rethink, how do our KPIs, do those need to change? How are we measuring success with the introduction of AI, and how are our reps using it to, either send follow-ups, provide executive summaries, product usage, things of that nature.
Yeah, definitely. There's going to be a shift in KPIs and how you're going to be measuring those successes. And I think that's important that you highlighted those areas. I mean, but with AI and automation transforming business processes, what opportunities or maybe even risks do you see for sales professionals?
Yeah, I think risk is people can be too reliant on AI, because when I was coming up in the sales org, right, we were trained a lot more on sales strategies such as Medic or Sandler, right? Being on customer calls, asking questions, getting to the problem, getting to the pain. How do we get to a point of we can align this to what you're actually trying to solve for? I think if people are too reliant on that, they may not be as sharp of, a seller as they could be, or an account manager, right? But then the upside is I think you can get a lot more done in a shorter amount of time, because when I was starting out, it just took me forever to do follow-ups and, record follow-up meetings, or, what's going on in the market, doing my research on a company's financials or whatever the case may be. So I think there is a lot of upside. I think just the downside is just being too reliant on it in some sense. Because at the end of the day, you still people still buy from people, and you want to make sure that you have good relationships with your clients and that you're out in front of them and you're not just relying on robots or algorithms or large language models, whatever the case, as a substitute for doing business with them.
Yeah, it's definitely going to stay human, right? I think the one aspect here is having that human touch, because at the end, it's people purchasing from humans, as you also mentioned. When it comes to personal growth and mentorship, you highlighted there was individuals throughout your career that has assisted you, that have provided a lot of opportunities when it comes to leverage, when it's come to giving you great advice. I mean, do you have any particular books or resources that have shaped your way of thinking?
Yes, I do. So regarding like mentorship and things of that nature, I would say like it's really just been like really good relationships with people. And like I have people when I need to call them for a specific decision. I think like early on in my career, the mentors I had were really good at like shaping me as a professional. But as I've gotten older, it's not as frequently like we're meeting. It's more like, hey, I have this decision that I need to make. Like, can I use you as a sounding board or whatever the case may be? So I would say like that's how I approach mentorship right now. Regarding like what shaped my thinking, like I said, I've just been very fortunate to be in good positions that have, put me in a position to propel forward in my career. I think like some of the books that have really helped me were like just going back to maybe when I was in my early 20s was The Defining Decade. That was Meg Jay. And it was just really talking about like, again, this isn't as business focused, but it was more just talking about like how your 20s matter, developing career capital, making friendships, creating relationships, and how those can propel you forward in your career. So that way in your 30s, like you have a very solid foundation. 2, I would also say like The Alchemist was probably one of my favorite books, just talking about like everyone has their own journey. You're really just there to kind of figure out like what makes your journey personal for you and what you want to accomplish. Like there's no right answer. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F, that was a great book. And then my last 2 was, I'll say I Will Teach You to Be Rich, Ramit Sethi, and The Algebra of Wealth, Scott Galloway. A little bit of personal finance nut as well. So that's kind of those are probably the 5 books that I would say like have shaped me so far.
Fantastic. Now, as we get to the closure of our amazing conversation, I have to ask this very critical question. What lessons have you learned recently that you wish you knew earlier in your career?
Yeah, I would say the same things that I said earlier, like be patient. Your time will come, right? Just make sure that you're showing up in a good light, like you're getting the little things right. I would say like don't get frustrated when people get either like you're pass up on promotion or maybe you didn't get the right job, right? Like rejection isn't the worst thing in the world. Like sometimes it's for you rather than against you. And then I would just say like say yes to a lot of stuff, right? Like just have a lot of coffee chats, make a lot of relationships, build good networks. Someday down the line, like those things are all gonna come back to help you. But that's what I would say is kind of what I would tell my younger self.
Beautiful. Wow. Well, thank you so much, Reed, for being on the Omega Podcast.
No worries, Keenan. I appreciate the time.